Hi, and welcome to our first ever virtual summit. I'm Stephanie Wade, co-founder of ChangeNerd. And this session is brought to you by ChangeNerd Learn, where you can continuously upskill your team with certification programs, next level practices, and tools with our online learning platform. And it's also brought to you by ChangeNerd Gigs, where you can hire top freelance change management professionals to supplement your current transformation efforts. To learn more, hop onto changenerd.com. Enjoy this session.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode. We're connecting with Jasmine Adams, a good friend of mine. She's a human capital expert with over 10 years of experience, and she's now working with startups. Jasmine, thank you so much for connecting with us to talk about how OCM practitioners can really boost their careers.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian, for having me. I'm so excited to speak with you again. I think what a lot of folks won't know is I actually interviewed Brian years ago about his public speaking and consulting firm. And so the tables are turned. So I'm happy to be here and have this discussion with you.
Absolutely. All right, so before we get into the content, Jasmine, tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, as Brian mentioned, I'm a human capital expert, meaning, so I have my master's in industrial and organizational psychology. I worked with two of the four big firms, KPMG and Deloitte, for almost a decade doing human capital management consulting at, all the big Fortune 500 companies around the world. And most recently, I've transitioned to doing consulting for startups. So helping them figure out their HR, their operations, building out their people teams, their processes. And then at the end of the day, my passion is career coaching and career counseling, career pathing. So I do spend a lot of time doing that for friends for free and then for associates for money.
Yeah.
Because we are in a pandemic and I'm just trying to figure out how we can, move forward. So really that's kind of where my expertise lies.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Jasmine, right now, COVID is still happening. For the most part, a lot of organizations are working virtually. When it comes to the change management industry, a lot of practitioners have gotten laid off. But now we see a lot of practitioners being called back to work. Some people are transitioning, to create their own boutique consulting firm. People are kind of all over the place. Like right now, how should OCM practitioners think about their career?
That's a great question. So, in terms of just to repeat, how should OCM practitioners think about their career? I would talk about that in two buckets. So, if you have been an OCM practitioner and you've either been laid off or your industry or company is stagnant within the industries that have been impacted significantly by COVID, that's one bucket I'll think about it. Or two, if you're trying to figure out how to pivot a little bit, within your existing role, we can talk about that as well. So going back to being laid off or in an industry that's stagnant, I would say within OCM, there are three foundational components, right? You're thinking about the engagement of the employee or the stakeholders, you're thinking about the communication component of it, and then you're thinking about the training or the implementation to help your stakeholders move through the change. So within that, you are technically an expert or have expertise in those foundational areas. So if you need to dive deeper into one, that's how you can then zone in into, so what are the jobs that are hiring to be a communications lead, to be a training lead, to be an employee engagement lead, right? So that's one of the things that I would say is figure out where you've spent a lot of time within those foundational components of OCM, and where you can double down on one of those capabilities to help streamline or focus what your skill sets are, and to target a specific job or to target an area in your organization where you see that they need help, and they're looking for someone with that background. So I'll pause right there before I go to the other side. But Brian, any thoughts or anything you want to add to that? Have you seen that with the practitioners that you've talked with during this time?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. In the job market, if you look at some of the positions, some of them are asking for a communications lead or a training lead. and things of that nature. So yeah, those are some options. And, you know, if you're supporting a project right now, do some job crafting, right? If you're the training lead, see how you can jump into more communications just to kind of build up that expertise so that it can become an option, you know, for your next role. So yeah, no, Jasmine, that's actually a really good advice.
Yeah, perfect. And you know what? You also made me think about the actual project management of bringing any type of product to market or bringing any type of implementation all the way through the end. So even as an OCM practitioner, project management is one of our biggest strong sets,
Yeah.
or excuse me, tools or skill sets that we can bring to the table. So you'll see a lot of jobs out there just asking for a project manager. And you can be able to bring those skill sets to whatever company that you're looking at. So, and then the other thing that I'll say is, you know, if you're in a role and you're figuring out like, so how do I expand my career or how do I move forward? The trends that I'm seeing in the market now are, I would say, adjacent to organizational change management. So the top two jobs that are most prevalent when you're looking on the job boards are some type of diversity, equity, and inclusion leader or consultant or project manager, as well as like core HR tactical skill sets. And so even though you may not have that full background in either one of those areas, you can still be able to articulate your transferable skills, right? So again, as a change management expert, the stakeholders that you're dealing with, you probably had to think about DEI, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion components to be able to engage those stakeholders. And DEI is not just about are they different ethnicities? Is it different genders? Like, yes, that's a component of it. But if you're thinking about implementing a new technology in an organization and you're the change lead, you have to think about, are there people with disabilities in that organization? Can they read the dark mode, right, that's so popular in technology? Are they able to see that with their eyes? If we're thinking about the training components, did you have to translate the languages? Did you have to have subtitles? Did you have to think about people who are hearing impaired? So, and that's just a component of DEI that a lot of people aren't thinking about. Yeah. Or if you are communicating with different types of with stakeholders with different types of backgrounds, what were the recommendations that you brought to the table that helped you successfully facilitate that change and connect with a variety of stakeholders? So that's what I would say when you're thinking about a DEI pivot or adjacent pivot, where you're still able to stay in change management, but you can bring that expertise. Articulate that and figure out how to articulate that. Reflect what's in the job description for those roles. And then the same thing goes for the tactical human resources component, right? Because honestly, a lot of what they're looking for are the processes, the procedures, the protocols, which you still have some type of expertise around because you were a change management practitioner. So those are some of the things I would also think about as change management practitioners, continue to move forward in their careers.
Yeah. Jasmine, what are your thoughts on relationship building and practitioners kind of stepping out of their comfort zone to share their ideas, whether it's through blogging or doing videos on LinkedIn or other things? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. So I think most of us, since we're in change management, we have a foundation in business and psychology, and we understand organizational dynamics and therefore relationship building, right? So I definitely don't have to say networking is important, you should do it. I think that's a given. Yeah. I think what's challenging in these times of COVID are we can't go to the stereotypical 5 to 7 p.m. drinks, for the National Association of Change Management, practitioners, yeah. Right? So how are we thinking about building and maintaining relationships during COVID when things are virtual and people are still hesitant about connecting in person? And so I think that's where you have to think outside of the box and understand that everyone is actually a little bit more, for lack of a better term, open to receiving inquiries, right? Because at least what started out in March, and I think it's still, progressed through the year, or people are trying to build their expertise and their skill sets while they're inside, while they have a little bit of a break. And so if you're reaching out to someone to say, I would love to learn a little bit more about, again, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't know you that well, but I see you are a thought leader on LinkedIn. Do you mind having a Zoom meeting with me or a 15-minute phone call for me to understand a couple of these practices? Yeah. You'll more than likely be able to connect with that person, and boom, that is a relationship that you are starting or a relationship that you're maintaining. So I think the relationship building is really important because, of course, those relationships help lead to future job opportunities or pivots within your career.
Yeah. No, that's actually really, really good advice. And then for Black people, for women and other minority groups in the workforce, do you have any special advice for those groups? Because sometimes,
sure,
getting the job that you want can kind of be difficult if you're a minority.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really valid question. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk about. But the two things that are top of mind when I think about women and underrepresented minorities in the job market right now is, since all of the civil and political unrest that has been happening over the last couple of months, minorities are at the forefront in terms of organizations finally waking up, so to speak, and understanding that they need to have a diverse workforce. And so the jobs that you normally would say, well, I don't know if I'm qualified, or I don't know if I would go for that, go for it anyway. If you're looking at startups that have a team of, all women or all men or all one race, all corporations, big and small, are thinking about how can they diversify their teams. So something that may work to your benefit is looking at organizations who either are explicitly saying that they want to diversify their teams, or organizations in the past that you kind of counted yourself out on because you're like, well, they don't look like they hire me or my type. This is the time where they actually want to talk to you. They want to diversify. They want to make sure that they're also progressively moving forward with the thought process of the rest of the nation. So that's what I would say in terms of like the job hunt. Now, once you're in the process of actually talking to this organization, interviewing, etc., you need to be very aware of the wage gap, right? So the wage gap, Brian, you just asked about women, Black people, other minorities. The wage gap exists in almost every single industry, almost every single profession.
Yeah.
So do your homework around what is the 93 cents to the dollar that your specific demographic is making in your industry, or within your technical capability. And then that will help you figure out how to have that conversation around what your worth is in the market as you move forward in your career.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Jasmine. Thank you for bringing all this insight. This is exactly why I wanted you to come on the show. Now, for those change management practitioners who are looking for their next role, and there may be some challenges with salary negotiation. What are your tips there? How do you handle salary negotiations?
Sure. So, and just as a shameless plug, I've been teaching salary negotiation for the last 3 years. And the reason that I got into teaching salary negotiation is because when I was working at Deloitte, as a lot of you change management practitioners might know, management consulting is a grind. And so naturally it's a revolving door. People are transitioning. So I was career coaching just my friends, my colleagues, of like, what do I do next once I leave consulting? So I would help them get into those interviews, into those jobs. And then it always came to the salary negotiation part. And so they would say, now what do I do? So I was doing my own research to help them. And then it turned into an area of expertise that I really became passionate about. Yeah. So the advice that I give, in this interview, in my workshops, are based on real life, tangible client situations, right? Companies that are having these conversations today. So the two foundational things that I'll start out with saying is for any job that you're considering, whether it's inside your organization or outside your organization, you need to approach it two-pronged. The first one is, what does this job pay in the market regardless of who is in it? So you need to understand, so there's four components that's going to determine that, right? It's the market, meaning like your actual location, right? It's credentials, what your degree is in. It's your experience, whether the years of experience you have or the type of experience you have. And then the fourth one is the industry that you're in. If you're working in a nonprofit versus a corporate versus et cetera, right? So once you nail down what those components are, because if I look for an IT manager role, right, and I'm like, okay, what is this job worth in the market? Is an IT manager role at American Cancer Society or is it at Google? Because guess what? It could be the same job with the same requirements, but they are going to pay different. Is it in San Francisco or is it in Mississippi, right? So once you get those components and you understand what the number is of what does this job pay in the market period, regardless of who is in it, that's your first foundational fact, right? The second part is now the subjective look at it. So now once you put someone in that job, what is the sliding scale based on what that person brings to the role, right? So say it's an IT manager for American Cancer Society in Mississippi. Say that role pays $60,000. That's the market, whether you're a minority, a woman, top credentials, state school, whatever it might be. Say it's 60,000. Now, when you put yourself or someone like you in that role, should that slide up to 75? Should it slide down to 55? Right? So that's where you also understand kind of where you would fall in the market. And that's how you help to arrive to your number around the salary negotiation and understanding what you should realistically be paid by this organization that you're applying to. I know that was a lot, but I just had to give
No, that's awesome. Great practical advice. Really, really appreciate it. So Jasmine, I want to be mindful of your time. Thank you for dropping all of this knowledge and helping the practitioners in the community understand how they can enhance their careers. So for those who want to reach out to you and just get more information, where can they find you?
Sure. Yes. Everything that I'm doing is all branded as Career Convos. That's one word, and it's CareerConvos, which means career conversations, right? But Career Convos for short. So I'm Career Convos on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook. That's my website. I'm Jasmine at careerconvos.com. So literally you can find me at any of those places if you just type in Career Convos, all one word.
Awesome. All right, Jasmine, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.